Because it's just a preference of mine. I mean, and also I do like the few minor things that the Ford has over the Chevy. So, there was talk that this body style was originally supposed to be for the 1980 Ford Granada. So Ford, the story goes, this is not, I don't know if it's true or not, so don't hold me to it. I could be totally, completely asinine wrong. But the story goes that like in 75, 76, they kind of drew up this body style or something very, very, very similar, and that was supposed to replace the Granada in a couple years. Because that was, you were going from the bulbous and kind of flashy 70s style to the clean-cut 80s style, this like late 70s, early 80s, everything kind of, so it kind of goes in waves. Back in the 50s, cars were very ostentatious and flashy. They had big tail fins, lots of chrome, flowing lines. Chrysler was always ahead of the curve as far as, you know, they had the forward-looking cars that had the A pillars that were like modern A pillars instead of the backwards ones like the Ford and the GM. In the 60s, when all the other cars were becoming very square and clean cut and conservative and no frills, no thrills. Yes, they still had chrome, but like you lost a lot of the flash and pizzazz from the 50s. The Chrysler, like the Dodge Dart and the Plymouth Savoy, and a lot of these mid 60s Chryslers were way out there as far as styling still. Then in the 70s, everything went from the clean cut conservative back to being big and fat and bloated and ostentatious again. And then they had enough of that, and then by the time the late 70s was rolling around, all the new designs were very square, very clean cut. You started losing a lot of the chrome and pizzazz. This was right about the time where the Americans had this trend of trying to be European, and the Europeans had that trend of trying to be American, like I talked about in the Cadillac video. So the story goes that they were going to use this body style and that front end for the replacement of the Granada, but then General Motors in '77 throws everybody a curveball and downsizes their full-size cars. And what Ford did, instead of they kept that body style in the rafters, just waiting, but they're like, you know what? Screw it. Our customers still want a substantial big car. And they advertised the 78, the previous generation from what I'm driving right now, as the last of the big value cars. Like the 78 LTD was the most car you can get for your money back then, because the 77, why would you pay full size car price and get basically something that's an intermediate size body? It just didn't make any sense. And so Ford had an advertising campaign. I saw it in a lot of old magazines, you see these old National Geographic magazines from 1970, 78 or whatever, and it had a picture of a 78 Ford LTD Landau and a 78 Cadillac Fleetwood, and it had the two side by side, and the Ford was just as long as the Fleetwood, yet you could buy it for a fraction of the price, because you're basically, for the cheapest, biggest Ford you can get, for the most expensive, biggest Cadillac you could get the same size car, but just absolutely a basement bottom price in the Ford. The same wheelbase and everything. And then they compared the LTD, the 78, to the 77 Impala, and they showed how much smaller the Impala was compared to the LTD as far as wheelbase, overall length, overall width, hip room, hat room, leg room, trunk space, the whole 9 yards. So and then finally the writing was on the wall, and due to government regulations, Ford was like, you know what, we need to downsize our cars like GM did in order to stay competitive, because people aren't buying these big ass cars anymore, especially with the second gas crisis. So they pulled that ace in the hole Granada proposal, and then they just rebadged it as the full size, the Panther platform car. I don't know if that's true or not, but I do know in '79 they went with the Panther platform because of restricting fuel economy regulations and because of the gas crisis. Chrysler, on the other hand, they were going through bankruptcy at the time. They had just hired Lee Iacocca on to try to save the company. And old man Lee, he put all of his research and time and development into the K car, into smaller cars, and the Imperial. Him and Frank Sinatra had this thing going where they made a smaller Imperial, which was like the size of a 82 Monte Carlo. It was still an intermediate car, even though the 75 Imperial was a full size 4,500 pound land yacht. Anyway, so they didn't have the ability to come up with a coherent downsized full-size car. And what they came up with was the R-Body, the Dodge St. Regis, the Chrysler Newport, the Plymouth Fury, I believe, or Grand Fury, and the New Yorker. And they only offered them in a sedan. They didn't offer them in a coupe or a wagon like Ford and GM did. They were beautiful cars. And the New Yorker was the most... A 79 New Yorker is the most posh luxury car from that era I can think of. I love those things. But even brand new out of the factory, they were reliability nightmares. Motor Week did a review of one back when they were brand new, and in the test drive, or like in the first 2 weeks of ownership, they had electrical bugs and stuff wasn't working. They had to bring it back to the dealer 3 or 4 times, if I recall. Also, Chrysler's had that goofy ass lean burn engine computer management thing. That was another sign of the times from the 70s and 80s, was trying to jam a bunch of electronics into a car and basically asking those electronics to do some of the things that they were designed to do was asking a waffle iron to play Halo 4. The technology just was not there. So these things would constantly crap the bed all the time, and a lot of times you would have, once the warranty expired, you would just have people overriding these systems. If you had the lean burn, you'd put in a aftermarket ignition box and a different distributor. If you had the variable Venturi carburetor, you just put in a Ford 2-barrel out of a 70s car. If you had a GM with the 864 motor, you just unplug the damn thing, and just forget about it. It was weird times back then. It was very strange days indeed. But yes, so to wrap it up, overall, I like this car because of the uniqueness of the front end. I like this car because, this thing was never a cop car. It was just, I could only speculate that it was probably a rental car. It started out, I bet, as probably a rental car because there's no police equipment on it. It's just a white plain Jane car with blue interior. And probably, if it was ordered through fleet sales, because it's an LTD S, most likely it was a rental car. But I do kind of like that it was kind of duded up like a cop car before I got it. And as much as I don't like the front end, that's an unpopular opinion of mine. I don't like the LTD S front end. I don't like the 2 big bug-eye headlight things. But it would be very easy for me to change it out. But I'm not going to do that because then that takes away the uniqueness of the car. I mean, this is what makes the car unique, is that it's, I mean, how many other 82 LTDSs do you see on the road? I mean, hell, how many other 82 LTDs do you see on the road? Not many. So that's one thing I don't like. I do like that it is a plain Jane slick top car. There's just something about, like, I don't like the mid-trim cars. I like it either to be the mooch special with a big engine, or I like it to be the most opulent god dang thing out there. I either want all leather and the 6 cigar lighters and the big vinyl top and the white walls and the whole 9 yards, or I want no frills, no thrills, you know, like sitting on a milk crate. Oh, there was almost an accident there in front of us. You know, I just want a plain Jane, like, know-nothing car. You know, this is like a Shine Runner's car. This is like what you would haul moonshine with, you know? I like that there is no power windows, so there's less stuff to go wrong. And I do enjoy the Panther platform cars. I like sitting up higher, you know? Like, sitting back and low and stuff is cool, but, you know, that's not how I roll. I roll just like a normal motorist, you know? I like the fact that that Ford did it so well that this platform lasted well into the 2000s. And, I mean, although a lot of things have changed on it, a lot of it remains the same. I park it next to my '06, and it's just like you took this car and just smoothed it over, you know, like with your hand. And it's interesting to see how this car has stood the test of time. And actually, this particular car that I'm driving, it's amazing to me that the car is almost as old as I am, yet it's still in such decent condition. It's not perfect. A lot of little rust forming on the fenders and the quarters. It's got some whiskey dents in the passenger doors. The seats are torn up in the front, but the car's still solid. It's still a good, coherent daily driver, you know? It shows that Ford built them pretty well. I gotta enunciate my words a little bit better. So, unlike the other video, I'm not going to keep rambling on and on and on. I'm going to wrap it up right here, but thank you guys for watching and tuning in and dealing with my ramblings once again. And, you know, I'm not claiming to be a professional. I don't do this for money. I don't do this for the fame and fortune or anything, because there is none. I do it because I like talking about cars. I like talking about my cars too. And, you know, I just like sharing my thoughts and ideas with the rest of the world. You know, it's fun to talk about these things, even though all this stuff happened 40 years ago. I mean, here this thing is still after 104,000 miles. It's still rocking the pavement. So, all right, guys. Once again, I'm John Cruz, and you've been watching Cruise Control. I want you guys to, you know, be safe out there, keep it shiny side up, keep it under 100. All right.